Welcome to Better Sex, where you get the information and inspiration to create and enjoy your best possible sex life. Join your host, sex therapist Jessa Zimmerman, as she brings you expert guests, helpful tips, knowledge, and strategies to improve your intimate relationships. And now, your host, Jessa Zimmerman.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jessa, and I'm so happy you're here for this episode of Better Sex. I've dedicated my professional life to helping couples enjoy a fulfilling, intimate life. I believe that sex is important. Our connections to other people matter, and we're not living our life to the fullest if we aren't connecting emotionally and sexually with our partner. That's why I'm here, bringing ideas and information to help you live and love better. Today's episode is another in my series of personal stories. I am really enjoying these. In fact, I want to invite you, if you're listening and you would be open to appearing on the show to share your story, please get in touch. We can make it anonymous, although your voice is heard, or not, depending on your preferences. And I'm willing to talk to you as an individual or as a couple. But if you've got transformation in your story, if you've got something that people could learn from, that could inspire them, just give some hope that things can change, I would love to talk to you. So send me an email, change@jessazimmerman.com. Get in touch through the podcast any way you can, and let's set up a time to talk. So today's guest is sharing her story of, I guess I'd say, claiming her story, rewriting her story, figuring out which parts she wants and which parts no longer serve her. You know, she tells a story about her conception and her parents, getting pregnant with her and how it was an accident. Basically, they weren't married in a time and place where that shouldn't be, wasn't okay. And she ended up sort of internalizing a lot of their bad feelings. And she didn't really understand until she was 12 and they shared the story with her where some of those feelings were coming from. And she had to rise above the conservative religious background that she was raised in, plus this baggage of her conception, to really take ownership of her sexuality and to start to question and evaluate everything about who she is, how she shows up as a woman, what she wants in sex, what she wants in a relationship, and really sort through and figure out what she wants to keep. What is authentically her and what is not. I hope you're going to enjoy the story and get something meaningful from it for yourself. And here is my conversation with Anca. So Anca, thank you so much for being with me today.
It's a pleasure, Jessa, to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's just such an honor to hear, somebody's personal story. I appreciate that. So give us a little background about you and your story as it pertains to, sex specifically.
So I'm a digital strategist and a life designer, and I'm 32. I think that for me, understanding where my sexual power comes from and really standing in my sexual power has been a struggle. And I think that is a struggle for many women. Mm-hmm. It's something we're kind of developing as we go. And it's very much related to who I was as a child, how I was brought up, and all the stories that I told myself about what sexuality is and who I am as a sexual being and so on and so forth. So which brings me to my describing myself as a life designer, because it's basically just about taking responsibility for the way that I want to lead my life. And that's very much related to who I show up to be also in my intimate relationships.
Right. So tell us a little bit about how you were raised and what kinds of beliefs you did come to have.
Yeah. Okay. So I was raised in a Christian context where when we were talking about sexuality, it was taboo. So basically, there was no talk around it, right?
Okay.
And I just remember, I think that also for just like growing up, I have these short memories of watching movies, and they would like always hide when people were kissing, or would try to like make me not pay attention to that, saying jokes or just like distracting my attention from that. And I think that growing up, I was feeling quite ashamed of anything that was related to sex. And then I had my first boyfriend when I was 15, but we started dating when I was 15, but we actually started having an intimate relationship when I was 21. And I think that the way that I was brought up played a lot into that.
Right.
The victim and the blame and so on and so forth. Yeah.
So what kind of memories come back that sort of illustrate, victimhood or shame?
I think that there are quite a few of them. So I remember, for example, maybe that I was very comfortable as a kid being naked from time to time.
Okay.
But then I think that at one point people started telling me that I should dress mostly when people are around, and probably I think that it was also a little bit of a struggle for me, because I couldn't understand why there were some rules as a kid, right? There were some rules for when I was on my own, and why there were different rules when other people were around, and how was I supposed to be honest, because we were talking a lot about being honest and morality. But then I was playing these roles, like sometimes I could do whatever I wanted and sometimes I couldn't. So that's one one memory.
Yeah, so it sounds like it was hard to be authentic, right? Like sometimes it's okay to be yourself and other times you're supposed to pretend.
Yeah. And I think that this is not only related to sex, right? I think that kids are conditioned to be like that, to play nice, to be like, for me, one of the roles and one of the masks that I took on was being the obedient little girl, the people pleaser, somebody who was like always nice and kind and making like jokes and making people feel at ease around herself. But that meant suppressing a lot of anger and suppressing a lot of other shades of my personality, mostly because they were not accepted, neither in society, not at school, not in my family, and so on and so forth.
And were it sounds like your parents were together.
They have been.
Okay. So were they physically affectionate? Like, what was your sense of sexuality in your household? Like some people are surprised their parents ever had sex, but except you're here, right? And other people are like, no, my parents definitely had a sexual vibe. It just wasn't okay for us.
Now that you're asking me this, I think that they were quite open. Like I even now, I think my parents kiss from time to time, and and also towards me, there was physical contact, right? Like hugging, kissing, and so on and so forth. And something that I stumbled upon, I was in university, and one of my friends met her dad. So we were like 20, right? So we met with her dad, and she kissed her dad on the lips, and I'm like, wow, that's that's weird.
Yeah, that made my eyebrows just go up. Yeah, I know you can't see that.
You see, I'm like, but it wasn't for her. So like, I think that I was raised in an environment where there was the moral rule, but then there was affection. And I also remember, for example, my mother being naked from time to time. My father, which wasn't the case because I was a girl, so then he would be in his underwear. But what I'm trying to say is that even if they were Christians and we are Christians and they are still very much Christians, there was a flexibility around body, and maybe sex per se was taboo, but not like the freedom of not wearing clothes in
Yeah. So it sounds like your parents enjoyed each other. There was a sensuality to them. Like it wasn't like sex was bad.
Yeah, I think that I didn't get that. I just got the guilt out of it, right? It wasn't that it was bad. It was just that, well, I just like something just popped into my head, and the very reason why we are having this conversation is because I need to tell my story, and my story actually starts with my parents having sex before marriage in the 80s in communist Romania, and my mother falling pregnant. So they were not married, and then there was this super big thing for her, and I'm working with a coach, and it was very helpful for me to like go back to that moment where she found out that she was pregnant, and they were quite young, 23, 24. So I think that emotionally speaking, even if I didn't know the story, because I found out about this story when I was 12, and I'm very grateful that my parents actually told me.
Yeah.
I'm like my mother, because then I could understand a lot of like my own limiting beliefs, not being wanted, not being accepted, and so on and so forth. And it all had the roots in this very moment where she felt pregnant before being married, and all the blame and all the shame, and me feeling that I kind of intruded on their lives. So this is kind of the context of, of
Interesting. Right. So there'd be this energy around that role in their life that, you're the embodiment of that, right? So I can imagine you're sort of the target, might be too strong a word, but the container for some of that difficult time.
Yeah, and probably like also if you are to think I'm a kid of passion, right? So they made me with passion, but it was not planned, it was not intentional.
Yeah, and then do you have siblings that were made?
No, I'm an only child.
Okay. Do you think that if you're a child of passion, that they were maybe extra vigilant about not seeing passion arise in you?
Maybe. I mean, like I haven't really thought about that. So now that we are talking, something that comes up for me is that they never really told me, like, for example, I had this boyfriend, right? And he was around a lot.
Yeah.
But they didn't really tell me that I should not have sex. I think that it was kind of like they understood that by bringing me up in a certain way, they were trusting that I I knew that I was not supposed. I don't know. It's really interesting. Like just now, I'm thinking about this, or they were like just assuming that nothing is happening between the two of us because I had their model, and because I know that unprotected sex can lead to pregnancy and to like teen pregnancy in my case.
Yeah. Like you would take their lesson, right? And certainly not repeat it. Yeah. Yeah. And I imagine it sounds like that was true, right? You were extra sort of careful and cautious, maybe not just from that story, but from that whole upbringing.
Yeah. I would also, because I'm a feminist, and I think that for me, what was very important was also feeling okay. Like the very moment when I decided, okay, this is it. I'm ready for this. I felt that it was my decision because we were kids, and like around 17, he had started pressuring me into, but everybody's doing it. Why aren't we doing it? And I stood my ground because I was like, I don't feel like I'm ready for that, and I'm proud for that, and I'm proud that I was in a relationship with somebody that even if it was difficult for him, he could understand where I was coming from.
Yeah. Okay. So not having sex was much more of an empowered choice.
I think so.
It wasn't just about shame or,
I think so. Yeah. I think that I kind of stood that ground even now, though I do realize that, for example, femininity is a big deal for me in my life and also around my friends. Like, how many women are actually experimenting orgasm during sexual intercourse? Not that many, right? Mm-hmm. As far as statistics go. And why is that? And like I started talking with my friends about these things, and I think that it's in the last years, maybe 6-7 years, that I've actually started working in a conscious way on everything sexuality and femininity related, so that I can actually really live my life in a much more empowered way.
Yeah. So once you were starting to be a sexual person by choice, how did that go? Were you running into limitations? Were there places your beliefs were holding you back?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was brought up with this Walt Disney story, the girl meets the guy and then they get married and they will be happily ever after. And I think that for me, sexuality is a very good soil to learn a lot about who I am and about my limiting beliefs. So even now, like I was brought up to think that once you have sex with somebody, then they will no longer be interested in you. Mm-hmm. And I can see that belief coming up from time to time. And then again, I worked on consciously disregarding that and working on actually reinforcing what I stand for as a feminist, where I'm equal and my desires are equal to the desires of my partner, and I can just embrace that and do how I feel about it without fearing that I'm gonna be rejected just because we got together.
So you spent some time with that fear earlier?
No, I think that in general, I was very afraid of being vulnerable. So sexuality would come into that. But just in a broader way, I was afraid of people knowing that I'm interested in them, even if I just like them. Because that meant that I would give them the power. So, yeah, I'm still working on that.
Right, but it sounds like you've got I mean, you've got a foot firmly on the other side, which is my desire matters. So, I'm equal. There's strength in wanting, not weakness.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's also because I define myself as a feminist, I think that it's also my role to educate people around me, not only women, but also men. And like once we get in a relationship, even if it's a friendship, then we can start talking about this. And like we are kind of inquiring the way that we behave, each of us, through this lens of conscious living and conscious choice. So yeah, it became important not only for my life, but it also became because I took it as a as a method of educating people around me.
Yeah. Hey, it's Jessa here, just taking a quick break in the show. So glad you're with me today. I want to invite you to be a part of the conversation. I run a free Facebook group called Sex, Intimacy, and Relationships. And I share articles and resources. I foster conversation and community. I'm there to answer questions if you post them. And I broadcast live, delivering information, ideas, inspiration that could help you with your sex life. I'd love to have you join me there. You can find a link at bettersexpodcast.com/community. So how have things progressed in your, sexual life, your intimacy? What kinds of limiting beliefs have you discovered? What have you done to change those?
So I'm a more goal-focused person, just regularly in my business, for example. I'm more goal-oriented. And I saw how that was actually applying in intimate relationships too. And I think that it was just about this like winning mentality, like being a winner. And that equals in a relationship, like in an intimate relationship, with reaching climax and not being interested in what is happening between foreplay and reaching climax.
Oh, okay. So the sex itself was goal-oriented.
Exactly.
Right. Like we get to the finish line and that's the whole point. Exactly. Right. Exactly. I talk to clients about that all the time.
Yeah. And then I realized that, well, I am goal-oriented and I think it's very important. But then again, the process is key. And just like this, realizing this in regards to sexuality, it helped me realize this in my overall life and just enjoying much more the present moment and being there and not projecting. Another thing is projecting on my partner. Is it good? Is it bad? Am I good? Am I bad? And this whole identity that is shaped through intercourse, who you become because you are somebody to your partner.
Was there a moment when you sort of became aware of the goal orientation and thinking, wait a minute, there's a whole process here?
Yeah, absolutely. It was with my ex-partner. We had been together for a while, and I think that I was feeling invisible, and that was very much related to how I felt maybe with my parents. And I was thinking, why is this? And like I was constantly thinking that we have to have sex every single day for me to believe that he's actually attracted to me. So I was asking for this, and he was like, but sometimes I just don't feel like it. I was like, oh, sometimes I also just don't feel like it, but like the quantity matters.
Right.
And we had the talk, and then I realized that it's not about the quantity. It's not, like there are all these, I think that girls relate a lot to this. There are all these articles about, what it means to be in a good relationship. And then you have to like check everything off the list, and having regular intercourse is one of them.
Yeah.
So then people are like, oh, we need to have sex every single day so that we are a solid, so that we can prove ourselves that we are a solid couple.
Yeah, I certainly have people ask me a lot, what's normal, or how much sex is, should we be having? Yeah. As if you can count it, as if there's an answer to that question.
Yeah. Well, I'm telling you, I did count.
Yeah. But it sounds like, when you and your partner at the time looked at each other and it's like, wait, sometimes we just don't want to, and maybe that's okay. That was a nice shift.
Yeah. And I think that another shift was when I was on a training, and I had a connection with a guy. He was much younger than me. And then at one point, I think that he said we were expressing things that we need in our life. And he stood up during the training and he was like, oh, I need more sex in my life. And all of a sudden something struck me because we had this connection. We had been talking for a while. And I realized that he was mistaking sex for intimacy. And what he was craving was actually intimacy, but he was calling it sex. And I was like, oh, this is it. You know what I mean? I'm trying to have sex with my partner so often because I actually lack intimacy and connection with him. And I'm trying to make up for that by having sex. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's sort of misplaced, right? Like there's a longing for something, and the act of intercourse itself is not necessarily going to get you that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it could, right? But not always.
Yeah.
Interesting ahas. Any others that you can think of? Like what else have you encountered in your journey here?
Well, now I'm inquiring a lot the relationship between sexuality and what I have as a goal for a relationship, right? So just going out of this Walt Disney story where I need to get married and have the same partner for the rest of my life and have kids and so on and so forth. And I'm deconstructing that. And I'm also deconstructing my gender identity because I'm a woman and I look like a woman and I've been identifying with being a woman. But then again, what does that mean apart from the biological gender, but the biological sex? What does it actually mean to me? So I'm thinking about what does it mean to be in a relationship with somebody? What does it mean to be what are one night stands, and is that something that I've been having or not? And you know.
So where are you coming down on some of these questions? I realize you might not be at a final answer. Maybe we never get there. But what are you thinking about what you want in a relationship, or what you're learning about how you want to identify in terms of gender?
Yeah, I think that in terms of gender, it's not really my struggle and it's not really my battle. I think that I'm okay with not defining anything. I'm like, I am who I am. I look the way that I look. And I think that acceptance is key in that regards. In terms of a relationship, I am, it's quite complicated. I must admit, because my goal in this lifetime is to basically be as close to who I truly think I am as possible, or being as authentic, as real, as unapologetic, untamed, wild as I can be.
Yeah.
And I think in relationships, I personally need to be very present, to not lose myself and to not project myself into the eyes of another, and allow the eyes and the perspective of another to build me and to buy into their story about me. So this is the struggle for me now, and this is like my ultimate goal, to be able to be in loving, committed relationships, which might be binary, like two people, but also just be like a galaxy of people. I don't know.
Yeah.
And be able to stay true to who I am and not expect and not punish people for not loving me the way that I would like them to love me, and for the way that I would like them to show appreciation and affection and so on and so forth. Yeah.
Okay, so that sounds like you want to give your partners, however many there may be, the freedom to experience you however they experience you, and not set yourself up like they need to approve or accept or validate me.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you for putting it in those words. Yeah.
And is there a way that shows up in sex that you can think of? Like, it seems to me there'd be some parallel in the way that you're sexual with a partner.
Absolutely. I think that as a woman, I've been taught that I am mostly a sexual object and that I'm mostly there to please somebody. Of course, sexually, but then again, in my life, that I'm there just to please somebody and just to fulfill somebody else's needs. And I think that being able to understand my needs, and I think that I haven't quite made that clear, that sometimes I just need intimacy. I just need to be held and to have this intimate connection with somebody, and then I can choose whether or not I'm moving forth with having intercourse. And this, I think, is a struggle for many women because, well, we live in a rape culture, right? So like when you are intimate and you are already naked and you are hugging somebody and you are like caressing somebody, then the normal normal. I'm making
right. Air quotes. Yes, I can hear them.
step is to have intercourse and designing the freedom for myself to say, I like this, I'm okay in this moment, but I don't want to move forward, is, I think, is a little bit challenging.
Okay. So there's a tuning into what you want, and then setting the boundaries, really, right?
Yeah.
Not letting anybody assume anything, but checking in moment to moment about where are you and what do you want.
Yeah, and I think that it's also not only about me, just about my partner too. As I was telling you before, when you are with somebody who's making a conscious effort of being attuned to what they need and what they want in the present moment, is far easier, because then you can have this open talk and you can be like, is this us that want to move forth in a certain direction, or is it our conditionings that are kind of playing into it and we are just doing it because we think that that's what we are supposed to do? And another thing for me, I think, was a very big realization when I understood that sometimes in a relationship I'm moving to the intercourse part because I feel that that's where I'm gonna break it. So I'm kind of feeling that I'm sabotaging it by sleeping with somebody.
Really?
Yeah. I think it plays into that old childhood story where when you are vulnerable and available, people will not want you anymore.
Right. But I think I heard you just say that you do that in order to maybe end a relationship sometimes.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So,
instead of maybe being just more forthright and saying, maybe this isn't working, or I've had my fill.
I did have this. So like I'm thinking about one specific example where I liked somebody very much, but like we met in the middle of nowhere and there was no way for us to develop anything more than that moment, those days. So then I think that I went ahead with having sex with him because I was thinking, anyhow, this is not going anywhere. So might as well either complete it by having it like fully completed here and now, or sabotaging it. And probably they were very much related, like feeling that it was completed and feeling that I am sabotaging whatever could have happened between us by having sex and by just giving, I'm making air quotes again, giving what he wants.
Yeah. It's interesting. It brings me to a point that I make with clients a lot, that the exact same behavior can sort of come from the best in us or the worst in us. Right? Like, so pursuing sex with that person could have been from the very best about, this is an opportunity. I'm going to, my pleasure and my desire is valid and important, or it could have been more from the worst is, let me sabotage something because I'm buying into this old belief system, and sometimes it's hard to tell where that line is.
It is hard to tell. And I remember that after this moment, I kind of took the decision of sleeping, because also for women, I think there is, like, when you fall pregnant, there's a lot of blame on yourself. And I think that many women still blame themselves, when they fall pregnant. And I heard this like from many of my friends who are like, oh my God, I'm pregnant and how can I tell him, and oh, this is gonna ruin his life. And I'm like, you did, but you had sex with him, like you were both there,
Yeah, that's right. You both made this baby.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm like, I have to admit to the fact that there is still this belief, and I feel it in myself too. So then I think that for me, it became clear that I do not want to engage in sexual intercourse with people that I would not have any interest of seeing afterwards, or like developing a relationship with, or just the very thought of them being my child's father.
Yeah.
And like accepting that I do not want to like have any relationship with somebody that I would not see.
Yeah.
But not in a romantic way, just like in a very physical, tangible, pragmatic way,
right,
as a possible father for my children. Yeah.
Right. So tell me just a little bit about how this life story and this journey of yours has shown up in the work you're doing now. Like, how has it led you here?
Yeah. So I missed on a little bit of a story from my early conception.
Okay.
I would put it like that, and you will see how this very, very episode relates a lot with the work that I'm doing now. So when my mother fell pregnant, my father's mother told her that she should have an abortion. And she did try to have an abortion, but for one reason or another, she couldn't. So
Wow.
it was, yeah. And like with my parents, they are my greatest masters, and we had like a very challenging relationship. We learned a lot from each other. And I told you that at 12, I understood. I understood why it was that I was feeling in certain ways, like
Yes.
not being wanted, not being desired. This in the context of my parents being extremely loving and affectionate and giving me everything that they had, but I still had that feeling,
Yeah.
So then I got to understand it, and this translates now into the work that I'm doing of owning your story and doing the work. So I'm a life designer. This is what I call myself.
Yeah.
But basically I'm a coach, and then I teach yoga, and then I also do marketing. And I actually have this business. It's called Dasmatya, and we are going to launch it in June. It's also my birthday in June, where we are making these empowerment t-shirts. So basically, you are going through this design process where you are revisiting your story. You are revisiting the stories that you are telling yourself about who you are, and seeing whether or not those labels still fit. And if they don't, then it's time to give them up. If they still fit, then you can keep them. So it's all about rewriting that story and really creating that story that is completely authentic to who you are at this moment, and then owning that by presenting it on a t-shirt and coming together in this community of women that are doing the same kind of work. And then 3% of the profits are reinvested in women, in NGOs that are working on women's rights in Romania. So yeah, that's what I'm doing now.
Great. So how can listeners find out a little bit more about you?
They can find me on my website. So like I have an umbrella website, which is Anca Stefania Iorgulescu. It's ANCA ANCEFANIAIORGULESCU.com.
Okay, I'll make sure we put a link in the show notes.
Yeah.
So.
They can find everything about me there.
Okay. Yeah, because normally, these personal stories, I don't put full names and things like this. I'm making them more anonymous, but I will definitely share your link in the show notes so people can find you.
I'm okay. Like, I think that, it's been difficult for me to own this story. But I feel that I've done a lot of work, and it no longer takes space from me.
Yeah.
Everything happened, and I think it's very powerful for me to be able to say this, because I think that many women have found themselves in my shoes.
Right. Well, thank you so much for sharing the story.
Thank you, Jessa. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to do so.
You've been listening to Better Sex. Please visit our website, bettersexpodcast.com, for show notes and additional episodes.
And that's a wrap for today. I really hope you enjoyed the episode. If you are enjoying the podcast, if some of this material resonates with you and you would like to make a difference and make sure that this keeps coming out in the world once a week, ongoing, there are a couple things you could do to show your appreciation. The first would be to go to iTunes and rate and review the show. That really helps us be found by new listeners when you review the show on iTunes. You can find a link at bettersexpodcast.com/iTunes. The other thing I want to invite you to consider is becoming a Patreon. For a small monthly pledge, you get some benefits. So for $2 a month, you get advance access to every single episode. For $5 a month, you get a chapter of my upcoming new book. And for $10 a month, I host quarterly get-to-know-you and question-and-answer chats over the web, and you get invited to that. I would love to have your membership in that, become part of the Better Sex family. You can find a link at bettersexpodcast.com/Patreon, which is Patreon. Again, thanks for listening. I'm glad you're here. Feel free to comment, ask questions, get in touch. I'd love to hear from listeners. Thanks.